Donald Trump literally wants a redo of the Iowa Caucus. This story is already incredible because apparently nobody told Donald Trump, dude, that's not a thing. Like, that's not an option. That's not something that anybody could ever conceive of or try to do. Or the guy is having verbal diarrhea in front of the world, and he's either making a clown of himself or he's clowning all of us, and he's been trolling us all along, or what's most likely is probably a mix of both. So let me go ahead and give you what The Hill says here. They report, quote, Trump is accusing Republican presidential rival Ted Cruz of committing fraud ahead of Monday night's Iowa caucuses, and he is calling for a new election. Based on the fraud committed by Senator Ted Cruz during the Iowa caucus, either a new election should take place or Cruz results nullified. Where did Donald Trump say this? Of course, sticking with the same kind of strategy that he's been using all along, he said it on Twitter, which makes it even funnier. Now, earlier in the day, he also tweeted and then quickly deleted this, quote, Ted Cruz didn't win Iowa. He illegally stole it. That is why all of the polls were so wrong, and why he got so many more votes than anticipated. Bad. He ended it with bad, with an exclamation mark, of course. That's so Donald Trumpian. You always have to have something that's just emoting. A word or a term that just emotes to try to convey your message like a kindergartner. So, Cruz Campaign fired back, and I must admit, as much as I despise Ted Cruz, and as much as I think he's perhaps even worse than Donald Trump, this is kind of witty. They said, reality just hit the reality star. He lost Iowa, and now nobody is talking about him, so he's popping off on Twitter. There are support groups for Twitter addiction. Perhaps he should find his local chapter. All right, now, in reality here, believe it or not, Trump is half right. So the part that he's half wrong is obvious. That's not possible to do a redo of the Iowa caucuses. That's a ridiculous idea, and everybody should mock it, and everybody is mocking it. It's just so profoundly unserious of an idea. He's wrong about that. But in terms of Ted Cruz, and was Ted Cruz playing dirty politics or not, the answer to that is, oh, absolutely. There were multiple stories that broke about him and his campaign doing exactly that. So one of the things that they did was, I even fell for it. They spread a rumor about Ben Carson, about how Ben Carson is leaving the Iowa caucuses early because he needs to go to Florida to get a change of clothes. And in reality, they said, hey, he's dropping out. This is a sign of suspending his campaign. One of Cruz's top staffers, or one of his top backers, Steve King of Iowa, the congressman, he said he's the one who started spreading this, and then it caught on like wildfire, and then every news organization was tweeting about it. Ooh, is Ben Carson spending his campaign? I guess he's spending his campaign. And then a lot of people allegedly acted on the assumption that Ben Carson was going to drop out that night in the race, people in Iowa. So instead of caucusing for Carson, a lot of them went over to Cruz. Or so the story goes. I'm not sure about that particular detail in terms of how many people actually said, I was going to go for Carson, but now Cruz because I think Carson is dropping out. But the rumor was spread, and it was spread at least in part by the Cruz campaign. Now, furthermore, in the days leading up to the Iowa caucus, there were stories about how Cruz's campaign was sending out mailers to potential supporters that had a fake grade on it. It was like an election report card, which said, okay, this person gets a D, this person gets an F, you're not, civically involved enough, you haven't done your job in going to vote. And it's a way to try to get people who are uneducated to feel like, I really got to go caucus, I really got to go take part in this election because apparently my grade's not that good. And they try to make it look like it was official. It said like voter something notice in bold letters on, when they received it on the cover. So yeah, there's no doubt about it that the Cruz campaign was doing dirty politics. But that doesn't mean that you can redo an election. In fact, you can't redo an election. And I love how Donald Trump all of a sudden is surprised that, gosh golly, the Republicans do dirty tricks for the elections? I don't know how many of you guys know this story, but it was the Bush campaign that did this thing called push polling. I forget what state it was in, but basically staffers would call up people who were considering voting for John McCain, and they said, would you be more likely or less likely to vote for John McCain if you heard that he fathered an illegitimate black baby? Now, of course, he didn't do that, but people who were listening to it assumed, I guess he fathered an illegitimate black baby, or else why would the pollster be asking me this question? And push polling is something, it's been done, on the Republican side of the aisle, I think for decades now. So Republicans are used to this. This is just another day. This is a day that ends in Y in a Republican election across America. So for Donald Trump to play coy here, surprise, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Donald, I'm sure that you and your campaign and your staffers, if you haven't been involved in dirty tricks yet, you're going to do it, and you probably have already been involved in dirty tricks. And the few policies you've advocated for are in and of themselves incredibly dirty. Like the idea of banning all Muslims from entering the United States, until you figure out what's going on. Or, this isn't a policy, but when you said about Mexicans, well, they're rapists. I assume some of them are good people, but they're rapists. What the fuck, man? Or when you said we should kill the families of terrorists. These are all, you're advocating for war crimes. This is lunacy. But now all of a sudden he's like, oh my God, decency. Have some decency. Have some respect. What, are you kidding me? You sent out a misleading mailer? Well, that crosses a line, mister. I think all of you guys crossed the line a long, long time ago. But overall here, yes, Cruz did use dirty tricks. Nobody should be surprised by that. And it's okay to point that out, Donald, but no, you can't get a redo of the election. That's not a thing.